what does empowerment actually look like? For a long time, whether it's simply standing in front of your classroom, presenting your own presentation in front of your class, or in conferences/meetings, or even in your everyday after-school activities or school clubs, I thought empowerment looked like confidence or certainty, like you have it all figured out. But now I realize that empowerment didn't start when I became more confident or have it all certain or got everything figured out. I actually realized that empowerment is not louder or more visible, or if you're even more sure of yourself. Empowerment begins with recognition. Growing up, my future felt logical. Most of the people around me had similar majors and similar paths that made sense on paper. And I followed that path, not because it was right for me, but because it felt expected. It was like being handed a map before even knowing where you wanted to go. And I followed it, step by step. But then, while trailing on that path, I realized that I wasn't lost. I was just walking in someone else's direction. Then I attended my first political conference, where I spoke and discussed about real-world political issues and tried to solve them. And honestly, I didn't walk in thinking this would change my life in a way. I didn't walk in thinking that I would find my so-called passion. But I was just there. But I noticed during those sessions, I noticed the way I listened, the way I understood perspectives before arguing them, and the way I paid attention to every single detail. I did not walk out with a new 5-year plan, but it did plant a question in my mind, one I couldn't unhear. What if my voice mattered, even if it wasn't the loudest in the room? This moment didn't suddenly give me a new skill, but it did reveal a trait I always had. Then I realized something important. Personal branding isn't about being, as I said before, more louder. Personal branding is actually about understanding the traits that already shape how you think, how you decide, and how you connect. Personal branding is not also about performing well. It's about uncovering the version of yourself that already exists. It's the difference between wearing a costume and learning how your own skin fits. And yes, we often think that personal branding is about being more visible and more confident and even marketing ourselves better. But real personal branding starts much earlier with self-recognition. When you don't understand your traits, you start copying others. You borrow their confidence. You borrow their paths. And then slowly, without even realizing it, you start to disappear as your own person. I used to think empowerment meant proving you belonged. But actually, empowerment is when you stop asking, how do I become like them? and start asking, what do I naturally bring that others can't? That shift changes everything. When you recognize your traits, copying feels unnecessary, and comparison feels irrelevant. Why, you may ask? Because you finally see your value. Comparison is loud. Recognition is quiet. And when you finally hear that quiet voice for the first time, it's harder to ignore. Then you realize that you're not asking who you should be, you're actually asking who you really are. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in. Emotional intelligence isn't about being nice or about being empathetic. But actually, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize emotions in yourself and in others, then respond accordingly. Emotional intelligence actually shapes how we lead, how we collaborate, and how we earn trust. And most importantly, emotional intelligence is what builds our personal brand. Your personal brand is not what you know. It's how you apply what you know. Respond under pressure, listen, and solve problems when no one is watching. Those patterns tell a story, and that story becomes your brand. When you apply emotional intelligence to personal branding, something powerful happens. Your brand becomes less about showcasing achievements and more about demonstrating values. Less about impressing people and more about being understood. At some point, I stopped saying, I'm not good at this, and instead started saying, I'm not bad at this, just different. Emotional intelligence is what makes empowerment truly begin. Not with confidence, but with self-recognition. So I want to leave you with this. Your traits shape your perspective, and your perspective shapes your brand. And that perspective is rare. Because the moment you build your personal brand around who you are and not who you're trying to be, means you stop trying to fit in and start standing in your values. Empowerment isn't a spotlight moment. It's not an applause. And it's not an approval. Empowerment is the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and realize you've been standing in your own place all along. Thank you.